Nuclear experts from the International Atomic Energy are on their way to Ukraine's giant Zaporizhzhia facility. They're aiming to check the safety of the Russian-occupied plant, which has seen several near disasters in recent weeks. Russian authorities, in the nearby town of Enerhodar, accuse Ukraine of drone strikes on the power station. But Russia is accusing shelling by the Ukrainians and Ukrainian-held Nicopol on the opposite bank of the Dnieper River and other areas near the plant, including the city of Zaporizhzhia. Today, the head of the IAEA mission, Raphael Grossi, said they were going ahead despite reports of continued shelling.
We are moving. We are aware of the current situation. There has been increased military activity, including this morning. Until very recently, a few minutes ago, I have been briefed by the Ukrainian regional military commander here about that and the inherent risks. But weighing the pros and cons, and having come so far, we are not stopping. We are moving now. We know that there is an area, as you know, the so-called grey zone, where the last line of the Ukrainian defense comes, and before the first line of the Russian occupying forces begin, where the risks are significant. At the same time, we consider that we have the minimum conditions to move, accepting that the risks are very, very high.
DW correspondent Matthias Böllinger is standing by for us in Zaporizhzhia. Matthias, what more do we know about the UN team's mission today?
Yeah, their hope is to arrive at the plant today and to start their work. What they're going to do there is to see the working conditions of the people who are working there, whether they can work in conditions that ensure safety, whether all the safety protocols are still in place, the safety mechanisms still working, whether the fuel that has been stored there is still there, and things like that. It's a dangerous trip, he has just said it, because they have to cross the line. It's the first time that the IAEA has to cross a front line in a war, and there has been shelling this morning, and there have been warnings that this might not go ahead. We've just seen the head of the military administration here saying that the mission might not be able to proceed. We don't know much more now.
And there are reports that this shelling continues with, I guess, both sides again blaming each other.
Yes, that's what's happening. There was shelling again at the site in Enerhodar, and there has also been shelling, at least that's what the Ukrainian side says, of the road there. The shelling, the Ukrainians accuse the Russians of the grey zone that he has just been speaking of.
How successful can this mission really be, considering they do need time and time is not on their side?
So the hope is that some of the inspectors that are going there now will stay there and will continuously monitor the situation. The Russians have in principle said that they would agree to that, and the IAEA has said that they want to do that. That would of course be crucial, because in a day or two it's possible to just clean up a few things and, present a picture, and then what happens after they leave is unclear. So staying there, continuously monitoring, would probably enhance the effectivity of this mission by a lot.
But that would take commitment from both the Russians and the Ukrainians in trying to find a joint solution here, wouldn't it?
I think the ball is on the Russian side. If Russia agrees that they can stay there, they can stay. Ukraine doesn't have any influence on what's happening on site. I think the most important part from the Ukrainian side was to allow safe passage for them, to negotiate the route of passage, to ensure that nothing will happen to them on the way. That was the Ukrainian part. They also gave them information about what they should inspect there, technical details about the power plant. But whether they can stay on site is more a decision that the Russians have to make.
DW's Matthias Böllinger, many thanks. Let's get more from former British Army officer and military analyst Mike Martin. How likely is Russia to allow for an extended monitoring mission in Zaporizhzhia?
I think Russia's playing games at the moment. Your listeners, viewers might recall that at the beginning there was a big argument about whether the team was going to come through Kyiv, through the Ukrainian side, or whether it's going to come through Russia. The Russians lost that battle. So now what they're doing is playing games and saying, well, you know, you can only come for a day, or you've got to queue up like everyone else at the checkpoints. We can't give you extended passes. So really it's just in the Russians' hands.
We've also been reporting on Ukraine's counteroffensive in Kherson for days now about whether or not it will go ahead and in what form. What more can you tell us about what's going on?
We don't want to go into too many details for obvious reasons, and the Ukrainians are operating a very strict media blackout. But the offensive has started, and the phase that they're in at the moment is what's called a shaping phase. And what you do in a shaping phase is you take out infrastructure. So the Ukrainians have hit a couple of bridges over the last 48 hours. You continue to target air defense, command and control, and supply. There's probably about 10 or 20,000 Russian soldiers in that pocket north of the Dnieper River. It will be impossible to kill every last one of them. And so what the Ukrainians are trying to do is shape the battlefield to create situations where they collapse or run away. But we shouldn't expect this to be quick. It's 10,000 Russian soldiers, but we will see this play out over the next month or so.
At the same time, I think it's important to bring up these reports that we're hearing of US intelligence officials saying that Russia's military is facing severe manpower shortages. But at the same time, there have been reports that the Kremlin is also assembling a third army corps. What can you tell us there?
Well, I think there's two things we have to look at here. One is quantity of soldiers and one is quality. And Russia has suffered from a lack of both throughout the war. And they've taken fairly substantial casualties as well. So the Third Army Corps, they tried to assemble 15,000 soldiers and they've managed to get about 5,000. And if we look at the quality, a lot of these guys are, they've extended the age limit to 60. There are reports of them offering prisoners early release to go into it. So there will be about 5,000 very poorly trained. Some reports say they're getting 2 weeks soldiers. I think the Russians are intending to position them in the north of the country to create a kind of a diversion or a demonstration, because it will mean that Ukraine will have to tie down some units up in the north of the country. But really, I think what this is a bit of a distraction, a little annoyance that Ukraine has to deal with, but it's not substantially going to affect what is going on in the south, in Kherson and in Crimea.
A question of quality, not quantity, as you heard it there from military analyst Mike Martin. Thank you very much.
Thank you.